Locked On Grizzlies podcast. The Grizzlies make it clear that they truly feel jitty, not only in the present, but for the foreseeable future by extending John Konchar. What that continues to show about the Grizzlies and their players this offseason, what it means for John Konchar's role now and moving forward, and a little bit of a recap from the Grizzlies Summer League start in Salt Lake, all on this edition of the Locked On Grizzlies podcast. Here we go.
Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome one and all to the Locked On Grizzlies podcast. My name is Shawn Coleman. As always, it's a pleasure to be with you. Me and my co-host, Michael Cole, have been working in and out as far as hosting shows. Solo for right now with DeMichael taking care of Summer League coverage for the Commercial Appeal. But, of course, we'll be back with you soon, both together, obviously, to talk more about the Summer League and continued roster moves for the Grizzlies. You can find myself at StatsSAC, DeMichael Cole at DeMichael C, the show at Locked On Grizz, and obviously right here on YouTube, you just need to hit that subscribe button. So close to 1,000 followers. Just make sure you hit that subscribe button. Tell your friends. Tell anyone you know that loves the Grizzlies. This is where you'll get some of the best Grizzlies content out there. Locked On Grizzlies, your Grizzlies, every single day. Of course, we want to remind you that you can always follow the show at Locked On Grizz as well. Free on all podcast platforms. Just hit the subscribe button there as well to get the latest content. So the Grizzlies, Thursday was an exciting day. It was going to be the third straight day in which Memphis was going to be able to play basketball. They played against the Utah Jazz. We'll recap that game a little bit later on in the show with some of the more exciting talents for the Grizzlies being back on the court after sitting out Wednesday night. But some unexpected news came on Thursday as well. When I say unexpected, it was the fact that it was an extension, but it wasn't the one that, many of us had potentially anticipated when it came to, extension talks, coming to the end of the season, into the off season. The talk had been maybe Brandon Clark is the guy that the Grizzlies would extend. But actually, the Grizzlies went ahead and locked up perhaps the best pure example of just how special the Grizzlies culture is and their development track is for players who fully embrace what the Grizzlies are looking to do, and that is John Konchar. As it was announced that Konchar signed a 3-year, $19 million extension with the Grizzlies. Now, the thing is that Konchar really wasn't even up for an extension. The Grizzlies had just guaranteed his contract for next year, and so he still had 2 years left on his contract. So essentially, John Konchar is now signed through the end of the 2026-2027 season. The funny thing is that the Grizzlies, they could not guarantee his contract next year. They're not going to do that now, but it's just a very interesting move for Memphis. Don't get me wrong. It's a sensible move. It's a well-deserved move with how John Konchar has continued to improve in his role on the Grizzlies. But it definitely is a move that shows Memphis is truly invested in Konchar's development, and they continue to expect for his role to grow on the Grizzlies as time goes on. So now Memphis has locked up John Konchar for essentially the next 5 years at $25 million total. He'll make $2.5 million. $2.2 million this upcoming year, $2.4 million next year, and then the contract structure of his, recently signed extension yesterday, we will find that out. But essentially, it's 5 years now that the Grizzlies have control of Konchar at about $5 million per year. And let's make no mistake about it. We'll discuss this in just a moment. There is plenty of room for John Konchar to make this an absolute bargain of a deal, especially if the shooting that he showed last year continues to sustain. That is going to make this a very good deal. Plus, Memphis seems to feel that with trading away De'Anthony Melton, though, and it shows in the payment structure, John Konchar, in my opinion, doesn't have the ceiling of De'Anthony Melton. When De'Anthony Melton is combining his ability to create turnovers on defense with his ability to shoot, Melton is a higher ceiling player. But I do feel the Grizzlies think that Konchar can do many of the same things that DeAnthony Melton provided and probably could be a bit more consistent doing it. So that is one of the reasons why they were willing to invest in John Konchar. But here's the other big takeaway besides Konchar himself. And again, we'll get into why the deal could be a bargain, in just a moment. But this continues to show that the Grizzlies are not going to be hesitant at all investing in players that invest in themselves and also fully embrace what the franchise is looking to do. That shows with, obviously them giving the extension that they gave to John Morant. That shows with how much they were willing to pay over the next 2 years to Tyus Jones, how much they were willing to invest in Jaren Jackson Jr. besides his injury history, how much the Grizzlies were able to invest in Dillon Brooks and his continued development, how much they may be willing to invest. Again, the Grizzlies are going to invest in players they truly feel fully embrace what Memphis is looking to do. Now, don't get me wrong. This doesn't mean that Jonas Valanciunas or Grayson Allen or Kyle Anderson or DeAnthony Melton, for instance, this doesn't mean that those players didn't fully embrace what Memphis is looking to do. But with what Memphis is looking to put together, and especially with what Taylor Jenkins is looking for when it comes to shooting potential, but also value added outside of that shooting potential, the Grizzlies are going to continue to invest in those type of players. And when they find those players at a young age, they're looking to keep them in Memphis for a long time. So we talked about how, will the backcourt come into play? We know that we have Ja, we know that we have Tyus, we know that we have Desmond Bane. It certainly appears the Grizzlies feel that John Konchar is going to be a regular part of the rotation, both now and into the future. And again, when it comes to Giddey, it's hard to see there being a better example of how spectacular the overall development success of the Grizzlies has been over the past few years. And it's also spectacular to see the Grizzlies investing in a player that truly seems to get along with his teammates, that the teammates certainly enjoy. John Konchar is a great ambassador for both the team and for Memphis. Obviously, the whole brand that is Giddey, but also just in general the success story from an undrafted free agent to a player that the Grizzlies truly trust night in and night out, either maybe as the 10th or 11th man off the bench, or even potentially starting when it comes to it if there are injuries. So a very versatile player in terms of the roles he can play, but there's also plenty of reason to invest in his skill set. We'll discuss that in just a moment. Before we do, I want to talk with you a bit about Truebill. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm someone who every now and then I like to subscribe to these free trials just to get an idea of what a subscription might be, or what a campaign might involve. But sometimes those free subscriptions can get a little bit bad to deal with because of the fact that those free subscriptions turn into unwanted bills. And Truebill is the new app that helps you identify and stop paying for subscriptions that you don't need, want, or simply forgot about. On average, people save $720 a year with Truebill. Because company makes subscriptions hard to cancel, Truebill makes it incredibly simple. Just link your accounts and Truebill will cancel your unwanted subscriptions in one tap. And your Truebill concierge is there when you need them to cancel unwanted subscriptions so you don't have to. Don't fall for subscription scams. Start canceling today at Truebill.com/LockedOnNBA. Go right now. Truebill.com/LockedOnNBA. It could save you thousands a year. Listen, we want to thank you for making Locked On Grizzlies your first listen of the day, but make sure you continue to check out the Locked On NBA podcast. A lot of potential moves still to be made this offseason. Locked On NBA podcast has you covered. Make it your second listen of the day after making Locked On Grizzlies your first listen of the day. Forgive me, it's early in the morning, got a little bit of allergies going, but you know what? Feeling Giddey, and that's exactly how the Grizzlies feel. So as I mentioned, this extension with John Konchar is the latest example of how the Grizzlies are putting an excellent emphasis on making sure that they extend the stay. They fully invest in players that fully embrace what Memphis is looking to do. And the reason why I say John Konchar may be the best example of the Grizzlies development track, of how their culture truly allows for players a great chance to make the most of their opportunity, is that the Grizzlies, ever since they got John Konchar, have embraced what he does well. And when we talk about John Konchar potentially filling that DeAnthony Melton role, it's not that we expect John Konchar to reach the level of impact that Melton showed many times, but it's the ability for John Konchar to do things that you don't normally see from a guard type skill set or from a guard type profile that makes him so valuable at times. The rebounding, the defensive playmaking, the consistent hustle, the blocks, the steals, the ability to get rebounds both offensively and defensively. But here is the big key. And to me, this is the swing skill that I feel like the Grizzlies truly are willing to invest in because it's maintained its consistency even as Konchar has increased his volume, and that is his shooting. Absolutely. When you look over the past 3 years, John Konchar in his career, for instance, has made 78 career threes on 192 attempts. But look at the year-by-year progression. His rookie year, he made 5 threes on 10 attempts for 50% from the field. Not anything you want to, really put a lot of stock in because of how low the volume was. But his sophomore year, 21 threes on 56 attempts for 37.5%. Okay, again, may not want to put much stock in it, but you see someone who maybe you didn't think coming into the league was going to be a skilled three-point shooter, have a bit of confidence in his three-point shooting. But then look at last year. 52% from 52 threes, 126 three-point attempts. Good for 41.3% from three. So John Konchar in 3 seasons and over 2,000 minutes of play, he has attempted under 200 threes. So you're not looking at someone that's going to attempt a lot of threes, though he's about 3.4 threes per 36 minutes. But you are looking at someone who's comfortable shooting those threes, as he's made 40% of his threes over his career. But the big thing is, again, is that as his volume has increased each year, he's maintained his accuracy from three. But the other big thing that stands out is that John Konchar in his career, and he's attempted nearly 440 field goal attempts in his career. He has a true shooting percentage of 621 in his career. Again, I go back to the Grizzlies talked about in this rookie class. They talked about shot quality and shot value, not just the ability to get a shot off, not just the ability to shoot willingly, but the ability to know when to take the right shot, the ability to make right decisions to contribute to a team concept of consistently finding the best shot possible night in and night out, each as many possessions as possible. John Konchar helps to do that. Not only in his ability to know when to take the right shots, not only in his versatility to be able to shoot from distance, but also in his ability at the rim and from mid-range. Though I wouldn't necessarily say John Konchar is a 3-level scorer, but he could be if he needs to. The point is, though, is that John Konchar is someone who's willing to make the extra pass. Per 36 minutes in his career, John Konchar has seen his assists. He's averaged 3.1 assists to only 0.9 turnovers. Though those assist numbers have gone down as Konchar has played more minutes, he still is contributing in a way that allows for him to be able to help the Grizzlies find the needed shots as consistently as possible. And the last thing that also stands out about John Konchar, again, is a very good rebounding ability. He's one of the best rebounding guards over his time in the NBA for players who have played 2,000 or more minutes over the past 3 years. John Konchar's rebounding percentage, especially his offensive rebounding percentage, ranks among the highest of guard-level players in the NBA. And so he allows for the Grizzlies to also be able to create that possession, to maintain that possession edge. Maybe not to the point of creating steals and blocks and chaos and deflections on defense like DeAnthony Melton did, but he does it rebounding. His ability to rebound helps the Grizzlies limit extra chances for their opponents, but also create their own opportunities on offense. If you get John Konchar and Steven Adams in the game together, don't have the numbers in front of me, but I'd be willing to say the Grizzlies have to be very excited about the potential that they have of being able to get that possession edge, to be able to outscore their opponents just simply due to more chances. So John Konchar, from a culture standpoint, from embracing the franchise, from doing what is asked of him on a consistent basis, and the big thing for John Konchar is this. Besides the stats, besides the skill sets, besides what he adds outside of scoring, besides the things that he are good at that a lot of time most guards are not good at, John Konchar has shown a keen ability to, in his normal role, as throughout his career, the 10th, 11th man off the bench, to stepping up and even being a starter at times. Last year, John Konchar has shown there's not a spot too big for him. Yes, he probably would be exposed, or he probably would be overextended as a 30-minute a night starter. But when he needs to step up and make a spot start, he produces. When he's only playing 5 to 10 minutes a night, he produces. If he's closing out a fourth quarter in garbage time, he produces. If he's closing out a fourth quarter because there's injuries or because others have fouled out, he produces. John Konchar consistently produces no matter what role he is asked to fill. And that is a very, very valuable part of his game. So if John Konchar's shooting ability continues to maintain him, I don't necessarily think you're going to start seeing Konchar become a 40% shooter while attempting 5 threes a night. If he does that, the Grizzlies are in good shape as they've unexpectedly developed another significant shooter to support Desmond Bane. But if Konchar can attempt 3 to 4 threes a night and can shoot 35 to 40%, that is more than enough value from his shooting to support what else he does outside of scoring to make him valuable for the Grizzlies. I don't think that Konchar ever truly becomes a 30-minute a night starter for Memphis. If he does, hell yeah. But I do feel that the Grizzlies truly have embraced Konchar stepping up into that Melton-type role as a player that can add value outside of scoring, a player that can shoot the three when he needs to, but also a player that can consistently make smart decisions, consistently add positive value on the court. And the other thing that I think the Grizzlies fully cherish about John Konchar is that he's another player off the bench that can add defensive value as well. A calling card of the Grizzlies team last year, or over the past few years, is how versatile defensively their bench players, their depth has been. Konchar has added to that, and even as he potentially steps into a bigger role with the investment the Grizzlies have made, that defensive versatility should continue to shine. So John Konchar absolutely deserves this type of investment for the Grizzlies. I think the Grizzlies are going to find quickly John Konchar could be a bargain with the many ways that he could add value. And I know that I might get strike for this, but there's also the added understanding that with these type of extensions and with John Konchar still having some upside to grow into, John Konchar could eventually make sense as a potential trade piece. Again, I'm not saying I want him to be traded. I'm not saying the Grizzlies are doing this just to make him a potential trade piece. But the thing is that with Konchar's ability, he can add value in a variety of different ways, not only on the court, but potentially as a valuable trade piece as well. And so the Grizzlies have made an investment that could provide value in a variety of different ways. Hopefully, it's as a key reserve on a potential championship contender in the not too distant future. But speaking of depth, reserves, adding members to a championship culture, we started to see what intrigued the Grizzlies so much about some of the draft picks they made in Salt Lake City. A few takeaways from the Grizzlies' 3 games in Salt Lake in just a moment. But before we do, we talk all the time about, the Grizzlies betting on their type. The Grizzlies, taking, wagering that how they, look at or determine which prospects makes the most sense for them. That's who they're going to invest in. But when it comes to you wanting to invest in a source that'll make your betting and wagering on sports as easy and simple as possible, there's no better place than BetOnline, because BetOnline does the one thing I think that helps folks who bet and wager on sports come back to the same source, and that makes it easy. When you're betting and wagering on sports, you don't want to have to spend a lot of time setting up your bets or, going through a bunch of technical jargon just to set up the ability to bet or wager. You want to make that the easy part. You want your time to be invested and looking at the data, at the sources, at the stats, or whatever that help you make the right decisions. Well, betonline.net, the fastest and easiest way for you to bet and wager on sports. You can do basketball, football, baseball, boxing, UFC, even Vegas casino games. Just go to betonline.net, mobile device or laptop, and make your bets today. Can't thank you enough for making Locked On Grizzlies your first listen of the day. Tomorrow, a special Saturday edition looking at the Grizzlies setup for Las Vegas. Going to be a fun one. Not necessarily a lot of exciting matchups on the Grizzlies docket like you see, with some high draft picks going against each other and other teams and things like that. That happens when you have the second best record in the league. You may not necessarily have the same name value as other teams do. But the Grizzlies should be a very competitive team, especially if they show a few flashes from Salt Lake and Las Vegas. Make sure you check out the Las Vegas Summer League preview on tomorrow's edition of the Locked On Grizzlies podcast. So Memphis went 2-1 in Salt Lake. And to be honest with you, Memphis won both of the games that they were expected to win. Now, there was a bit of streakiness. It was a tale of two halves in both games. The Grizzlies could not have gotten off to a better start in Salt Lake than they did in the first quarter. I believe that they had 12 assists on 14 made shots and were 8 of 11 from 3 in the first quarter on Tuesday night. Well, they got off to a big lead, and then they struggled a bit. Forgive my hair again, morning hair, just waking up this morning. But they got off to a big lead on Tuesday. Struggled a bit on in the second half on Tuesday, but still won. They set their best players on Wednesday. Kenneth Lofton absolutely shined in the game against Chet Holmgren. But then on Thursday, the Grizzlies got off to a much slower start. It was a complete 180 from Tuesday into Thursday. The Grizzlies got off to a very slow start, but then in the second half, they scored, 55 points in 2 10-minute quarters. They were able to find their groove eventually. But a couple of things that stood out from a team perspective is that Memphis showed it can score from distance when it needs to, though it struggled mightily doing that on Thursday. Memphis can shoot from distance when it needs to, and it can use ball movement to get the job done. Zaire Williams, we'll get to the individuals in a minute. So from a team concept, the offense struggled a bit at times, but it showed the potential that it can shoot with anybody out there, especially if the Grizzlies are moving the ball like they can on the perimeter. Another big thing that stood out, the Grizzlies averaged over 10 steals a game and 6 blocks a game. Talking about the team that led the NBA in steals and blocks per game last season, this young squad did it once again. And it was the rookies that did it, right? Chandler, LaRavia, Roddy, Lofton, Vince Williams, all of them contributed to the defensive playmaking. So this defense, once again, Kennedy Chandler getting the steal at the end of the game to seal it on Tuesday. The young talent on this team being able to show the defensive playmaking chops that show their added value beyond their offensive upside, that definitely stood out from the Salt Lake Summer League. But individually, we talked about several different storylines from last year's draft class to this year's draft class. Zaire Williams, a bit of a mixed bag. Overall, pretty successful. He showed better scoring ability last night than he did on Tuesday, but he also showed on Tuesday that even if his scoring is not there, which it wasn't for much in the middle part of the game, he did a great job as a distributor. Those in-game looks to a going downhill Xavier Tillman to get good looks at the basket, that's exactly what you want from a playmaker coming off the pick and roll. So Zaire Williams showed different ways in which he could make plays beyond scoring, beyond his defense. I don't necessarily know if his playmaking ability was the best that the Grizzlies had hoped for so far from Salt Lake, but you saw enough flashes to know that when he's needed to be a playmaker or a creator instead of a shooter or a scorer, he can fill that role. And you're starting to see with Zaire that bag continue to get deeper. Shooting improved last year, which is great. Ball handling is something that's continuing to improve. Open court finisher, something that you hope he potentially could start to do better in the half court. That's there as well, but also a playmaker / creator, even as being a point man. That's something that definitely hopefully will continue to stand out. Again, it worked for Desmond Bain last year. The hope is it will work for Zaire. Santi Aldama last night showed that he can continue to contribute in other areas. His shot has looked better in the Summer League as well. But the big key of all, every single Grizzlies rookie from this draft class, the 5 rookies from the 2022 draft class, they all flashed just how productive they could be, especially offensively. Jake LaRavia's shooting, Kennedy Chandler's ability to create chaos on defense, Vince Williams' shooting, Kenneth Lofton's ability on the boards, but also knowing how to use his body. I know again, and Kenneth Lofton knows this, I know again Kenneth Lofton Jr. may not necessarily look the part of a basketball player, but he knows how to use his body to create advantages for him, even if he's going against players who may be more skilled, maybe longer, maybe taller, what have you. Kenneth Lofton knows how to use his body. He knows his game very well. That's what makes him productive. We saw that on Wednesday night. But then, of course, on Thursday, David Roddy showing his ability, showing his overall skill set on offense. Many different ways Roddy was able to find his shot. Though the shot from distance really didn't fall for him over the past 3 games, he did show his 3-level scoring ability. And that if the Grizzlies need some type of scoring surge off the bench, Roddy at times should be able to provide it this year. That's what the Grizzlies are hoping to find from that combo forward position. So overall, I would consider Salt Lake in the Summer League so far a success for Memphis. A 2-1 start, good defense, good shooting, flashes, but overall, you saw each and every one of the players that you wanted to see have some type of success. Each of them did. And hopefully that will continue to translate to Las Vegas. And don't forget, tomorrow, we're going to preview the Grizzlies' start to the Las Vegas Summer League tomorrow on Locked On Grizzlies. Until then, have a great day. We'll talk to you soon here on the Locked On Grizzlies podcast.